Okay, Tony here with rchelp.com. In the last video, you guys saw I set up everything to get ready to put this helicopter in the air on the radio. I've got my radio over there charging. If you got rechargeable batteries, you should probably keep it on the charger. It'll actually switch off when it's fully charged. So what we're going to do now is we're ready to basically install servos. Now, I'm kind of hoping that you guys have already built your kit and you're ready to go. Now my kit, go ahead and pop the canopy off. I've already got all my stuff on it. I've got my servos installed, I've got my speed control and motor. I've got all that installed, but I'm going to go just over it real quick and show you how to put all this in there and how to get all this set up correctly. The first thing you want to do is install your servos. Now if you're installing the same servos I have, which is the Turnigy MG90S, no, it's not MG90s, it's MG90S. They've got the MG90 and they're about $1 more and they're slower. Get the MG90S. They are $1 less, they're faster, they're stronger, and they're better. Now, if you're running these, you can see right here, I have had to install them on the inside. The reason that is if you look at this arm right here, you can see just how little space that it has, but you can also see that my arms are straight up and down. They're actually coming out just a little bit at the bottom. But if I was to put these servos on the outside, they would be coming out a whole bunch. You want these to be, I mean, I'm talking as vertical as you can get. So what you're going to have to do to put the MG90S servos in is you're going to have to take out every single screw in this top piece of top frame. Basically separate it with these screws here from the bottom frame, lift it off, take this apart, which you should be taking these screws out anyway to put thread lock on every single one of them that goes into metal. Then install your servos. As you can see here, I've got this servo on the bottom that's on the right side, the other side is on the top. If you got the Pro version, they're both going to sit kind of in here side by side. I don't have the Pro version. This is just the HK450 GT. See? So this is how I got to install them. Now, on the elevator servo. The elevator servo I installed on the outside. Now I know you're asking me, how do you know which one is elevator, pitch, and aileron? These two up front, because they're the ones that are kind of on the side. These are going to be your aileron and pitch. Does it matter which one they are? Nope. You can wire either one of these to aileron or servo, or aileron or pitch. This one that's always directly in line with your tail boom is always going to be your elevator. Now to give you a comparison, if you look here, the anti-rotation bracket or end guide goes along with this elevator servo. That's not the same on all helicopters. This right here is my Dynam E-Razor. It's still a 450, but as you can see, I've got my swash plate guide back here in the back, which is where it is on the HK450 GT, but my elevator servo is in front. It's still in line with that tail boom. That's all you got to remember. Okay, got those in. Now what you need to do is you need to put in your tail servo. Now when you're doing this, don't put on any of the arms yet. You don't want any of these arms on. I've got mine on because this thing's pretty much already set up. So mount this. Remember, every screw going into metal, even if it's like this and it has those little nuts on the back, you want to put thread lock. These things have a tremendous amount of vibration. All I do is just remove my satellite receiver. Then you want to mount your motor. Now to mount the motor on this one, I find it easier to take off this battery tray. That way you can get down in there. You may even want to pull out the whole motor plate and put this motor in, but you got to figure out where your pinion is going to go. I've covered pinion setups before and how to adjust them. It's pretty self-explanatory. You want just a little bit of play. You can kind of see I've got just a hair bit. That's actually got a little bit too much, but it'll be alright. Now once your motor's installed, go ahead, wire up your speed control, mount it to wherever you want. You can mount it to the outside of the frame, you can mount it to the bottom of the frame, you can mount it wherever you want. I've got mine mounted up here because, well, that's where it's supposed to be mounted. So what I'm running, in case you guys are wondering, I told you these are MG90S servos. This is an Alpha 400 3500 kV helicopter motor, and this is a 30 amp speed control. Now that 30 amp speed control, you can see right there, this thing has gotten so hot that it has melted the heat shrink. Why did it get hot? Well, it got hot because the timing in this was turned all the way up. This motor hates timing. You want your timing as low as possible if you're going to run a 30 amp speed control. Will you get a little bit more power by upping the timing? Yeah, but it's really about how many poles are inside this motor. Just leave it on low and you'll be a lot better off. Okay, we've got all the servos installed, we've got the motor installed, we've got the ESC installed. Now it's time to wire this thing up. Okay, on the Spectrum transmitters, you're going to have quite a few options on receivers. This one right here is an $80 AR6200. It comes with a little satellite. Basically the way you mount this is you're going to have one mounted like this, and then you're going to have one mounted like this. These antennas are going to be going horizontal, these are going to be going vertical. That's going to give you a less likely chance of losing your signal because of interference from the motor or speed control. Now, these right here are the orange receivers from Hobby King. These seem to be working pretty good. They don't have the range that these do, even with the satellite receiver on these, because yes, they do have this little satellite port that you can plug those into. They still don't have the range. There's some guys over in Massachusetts right now that are actually doing some testing on these antennas. They're matching the length and the resistance of the wire to each individual receiver, and they're trying to find a baseline for how long does this really need to be. So you've got some choices. What I'm going to do is, because you're dealing with a brand new DX6i, this is probably the receiver you're going to use. So we're going to get rid of the orange, and we're only going to deal with these right here. They're very simple to set up. So the first thing we need to do is we need to run all of our wires. Okay, as you can see, I've got all my wires run out. Now, don't you guys go freaking out on me. This is not as bad as it looks. There's only 5 wires here. There will be 6 going into the receiver when I get these 2 in. Why 6? Because we get to take one away. We plug it into here, which is into the gyro, and that's where your servo gets plugged into. So the next step in this is we're going to go ahead and mount this servo. It's very, very easy. The first thing you want to do, get you some double-sided tape. I cannot remember what the number of this tape is, but it is a great double-sided tape. It absorbs vibration. It's not real thick though. I wish it was a little bit thicker. If you can find thicker foam tape, it will help on these gyros. All you got to do is stick it on there. With as thin as this is, I always put 2 layers on. So put it on there, cut it, press it down real good, peel the backing off, and then put a second layer on. Okay, as you can see, I've got 2 layers of tape. They're not exactly the straightest 2 layers. Now what you need to do, clean your surface off up here, pull your backing off. Now whenever I do mine on the GY48V gyros, it doesn't matter if they're going to sit like this with the wires to the back or with the wires to the front. Because I have that option, I always go wires to the front. Why? Because it's neater, and if I didn't do it, ADD would be probably getting the best of me. One thing to remember on these gyros, don't ever take these wires and pull them just really tight to get it really neat. That will send vibrations from the helicopter into the gyro and mess you up every time. So go ahead and feed all these wires down through here. This wire you can leave out. Same thing with this wire here. You can pull it out, maybe, and you can do what's called, you can coil the wire. Now, to coil the wire, what you want to do is you want to just get the wire as straight as you possibly can, and then get you anything that is round, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, however big you want your coils, and then just start twisting it around like this. Now I know you're sitting here looking at this going, what am I going to do now? If I let this go and pull this out, it's going to uncoil every single bit of this, and it's not going to stay. That's where a little bit of heat comes into play. if you'll take and real quickly just kind of warm up that insulation and then let it cool as you're sitting here twisting on it, your fingers will actually cool this off. Don't get it real hot. If you do, you're going to burn yourself, and don't blame me. Now you can pull that out and that coil is going to stay. Now what I do is I take that very last coil, stick it through there, and then I keep going again. And I'll do this until I get all the way up to the base of that servo. As you can see at the base of the servo, I want to leave just a little bit that's a little straight, but I want to pull this down, tighten all this up, and then I want to take and wrap this around so that I know I'm getting a nice coil all the way through, and it's not going to look all funky by having this little bulge in the middle. Take you a little bit of heat, heat that up, twist it up, pull that out. Now, you know, you still got that little bit of a bulge right there, but it's not too bad. Now you want to do the same thing for this. Okay, as you can see, I've got the coil both in here and in here. When you plug these in, be sure to go signal wire to signal wire, ground to ground, and positive's always in the middle. But you can do one of two things. You can pull this over here and mount it to the actual tail servo bracket, or you can mount it here, or what I'm going to do, a lot of ors in this little conversation, isn't there, is I'm going to pull it down here, and then I'm going to zip tie it right up in there like that. That's going to keep this just all nice and neat. I've got a nice coil. It looks good. If you're like me and you have a whole bunch of OCD inside you, this is how you got to do it. It's just the way you, just how you have to do it. So now you want to run this down through the frame and bring it out with all these other wires. Okay, now I've got everything mounted. I've got this zip tied right here. Got that nice coil there. I did do something a little bit different here. You can still see I've got slack in this wire, but I took the coil out of it up here because it just didn't look right to me. It just looked too cluttered, looked too messy. So that's another way you can do it. Just make sure that slack's in there and make sure it stays off the belt. Mine was wanting to rub the belt. So now what you need to do is, easiest way to do this is take and fold your blades and put them in the blade holder. I took them out so that I could show you guys all that stuff. Keep them in the blade holder, or better yet, just take your blades off, you know, all together. Now, the easiest one you're going to find to pick out of all these wires is your speed control. Now on these receivers, the throttle is basically number 1. The battery isn't really numbered. So throttle is number 1, then you got aileron, elevator, rudder, gear, and auxiliary. Auxiliary is going to be your pitch for one of those front ones. Take this, and the signal wire always goes to the inside on these. So remember that. Signal wire always goes towards the label. Even on these, signal wire goes towards the label. So we've got that one in. Now we know that this one right here is the gyro. This one, the 3 wire, will go in to the rudder port. The single wire is going to go right next to it in channel 5 into the gear port. Now if you got this one here, you're going to have to shave off. There's a little bitty tab that's on this one side. You're going to have to shave or cut that off. Make sure that yellow wire, that single wire, is facing the label. Well, there's 3 down. We've only got 3 to go. So now you've got the elevator. We know which one's the elevator because it's the only one in the back. So we find elevator and we plug it in. Okay, we've only got 2 more to go, and if you remember what I said earlier, it does not matter where these plug into, whether it be aileron or pitch, because they can easily be reversed in the radio. Just plug those in. Alright, now you have yourself a bona fide jumble of wires. This is pretty much what yours is probably going to look like whenever you get done with all this. It's not that hard. As you saw, Start out with your speed control. You know where that is. Then go to your gyro. Then go to your elevator. Then go to the two up front that it doesn't matter if they go into auxiliary or into aileron. Remember that. This is not hard. I know a lot of guys get freaked out by this. So now that you've got that wired up, we're going to go ahead and bind the receiver with the radio. And then we're going to be able to set up all these servos and get everything centered.